Nehemiah is the central figure of the book of Nehemiah, which describes his work in rebuilding Jerusalem during the Second Temple period. He was instrumental in rebuilding and re-establishment of Jerusalem in the 5th century BC, following the Babylonian exile. Although there is no consensus about the relative chronologies of the books of Ezra and Nehemiah, Nehemiah's return to Jerusalem probably preceded Ezra's by a couple of years. Both men worked together to restore the city and rededicate its people to God. Nehemiah was a high official in the Persian court of the king at the capital city of Dsouza, which lay 150 miles east of the Tigris River, which is now known as the modern Iran. Nehemiah served as the king's cupbearer, which evidently put him in a position to speak to the king and request favors from him. After hearing about the sad state of affairs in Judah, Nehemiah acquired the king's permission to return to Jerusalem and rebuild the city and its fortifications. He is even given the letters from the king to ensure safe passage and to obtain timber from the king's forest for the gates and the walls of Jerusalem. Nehemiah returned to Jerusalem in 1445 BC as the provincial governor of Judah. He immediately surveyed the damage to the entire city on his well-known night journey around the walls. He enlisted the help of the people to quickly repair the breaches in the wall. He also urged them to set up guards to defend against the constant threat of those who opposed their efforts, including the armies of Samaria, the Ammonites, and the Ashdodites. The hurried work of repairing and rebuilding Jerusalem's walls and gates was completed in just 52 days. Another of Nehemiah's accomplishments was to make a record and genealogy of all the nobles, officials, and the people who were then living in Judah. The book of Nehemiah is usually read together with the book of Ezra as one long book. Some of the lessons to learn from Nehemiah. Nehemiah was the man who understood the importance of the call. He wept when he heard the news of the broken wall. Secondly, he was a man of prayer. Nehemiah shows how to pray to God and listen for His answers. In chapter 1, he spent a long time in prayer from the heart with fasting. Thirdly, he was patient and hopeful. He took his time once he arrived in Jerusalem before disclosing his plan to the people. He patiently kept reminding the people to trust God and that God would fight for them and help them. Fourthly, he was a great leader who inspired workers. Nehemiah spoke to all the people and inspired them to work. He shared the favor from the king gave and how God's hand had been with him, and that motivated the people. They responded by going to work immediately. Fifthly, he was a man of integrity. Nehemiah remained a man of integrity. He quietly worked for the king as a drink bearer. That meant tasting each drink to be sure it contained no poison. Nehemiah was prepared to die for the king and yet recognized God as sovereign. Lastly, he was wholly focused on God. Throughout the book, we see a man wholly focused on God. His example shines through the ages to inspire us to follow God closely. He never took credit for himself but gave the glory to God. Nehemiah's prayer life reflected a believer who trusted God. This is all about Nehemiah. Thank you and God bless you.